This is the Rainbow Bridge Podcast. I'm your host, Miss Nayshondra Mercer, but as always, you can call me Coach Nay. And oh, by the way, today, we are going to be talking about my journey to wholeness. Welcome back, my friends. I'm going to jump right in today and pick up where we left off, which was last week we talked about the story of Peter leaving the boat to walk on water with Jesus and how his own fears and doubts, which is represented in the text as the wind, scared him so much that he began to sink and Jesus had to reach out and save him. And we talked about that moment when Peter's courage was tested, the moment that he stepped out onto the boat and began to hear his thoughts of self-doubt or projections that other people had said about him and began to sink. And we see that in that moment, the only thing that was keeping Peter from doing what God had called him to do was himself. And in that same respect, I have been sharing with you the different ways in which God has been doing a new thing with me. And for this week's episode, I want to talk about my journey to wholeness and how this relates to the same moment when your courage is in question. And so what I would love to do today is something very special, and that is to introduce you to my book, Awareness Put Me On, that I've spoken to you about over the last couple of episodes. And I would like to take a moment and read an excerpt from my book to you in efforts to illustrate what this journey looks like when you are courageous. So just like Peter, when he stepped out of the boat, he immediately began to doubt that he could do the thing that God told him to do. And I totally resonate with that moment in Peter's journey, because when God called me to do many of the things that he called me to do, such as to create this podcast, or even when I got the invitation to write the book, I jumped all in to write the book and I didn't have very much fear. But the point is that I could have. And I realized that even though I felt a little bit of fear in that moment, that I needed to be courageous in sharing my story, because that was the only way that I was going to be able to get to the new thing that God was doing in my life and within me. And that would be the only way that I could see what he was doing. Because with every call, there is then obedience. And many of us are called, but not all of us are chosen. And for those of us who have been called and who have chosen to respond to the call, and then God says, okay, I choose you back. So, it's like God putting out a job posting because he wants to hire somebody or another, and you responding to that job posting by putting in your application. Well, they have to call you back and ask for an interview at that point, and then they have to make a decision on if they want to hire you in or not. That hiring process is exactly what it looks like when God makes a call on your life. He may put out a job posting for you that you feel like is perfect for you, but you have to respond to that in the same way that we saw Peter respond to Jesus when he said, Lord, if that's you, tell me to come out on the water with you. And when he did, that was like Peter getting his interview with Jesus. Jesus responded and said, come out. And that is representative of Jesus going ahead and hiring Peter for the job. And like most of us, whenever we get a new job, we may know how to do parts of the job, but more often than not, we don't know how to do all of it. So there's a learning curve there. And sometimes the things that we don't know in the new thing that God has asked us to do can keep us from doing the thing that he told us to do in the first place. And we see that here in Peter's story. And we could see that here in my story. But because I have an awareness around what the call on my life looks like and how to answer and respond to God, when I was presented with the opportunity by the mastermind behind this book's anthology, Miss Shantae Christian, I immediately jumped in, even though I felt fear, because I knew that the only way to get to where I am right now, speaking to you about this book and it being printed and it being out into the world and it being a bestseller would only happen as if I had been obedient to the call. And in the same way that Peter exercised his courageousness by stepping out of the boat, I exercised mine by writing this book. And I would like to take a moment to share with you an excerpt from the book that demonstrates this leap of faith that I took. And it goes a little something like this. The title is entitled, I Am Seeking Myself. Brené Brown opens The Gifts of Imperfection by stating that practicing courage, compassion, and connection in our daily lives is how we cultivate worthiness. She quotes Mary Daly, a theologian, who writes that you become courageous by practicing. It's like you learn to swim by swimming, says Daly. You learn courage by couraging. I couldn't agree more. I grew up to be the kind of person who practices these concepts daily. I typically do this by jumping into the deep end of life's metaphorical swimming pool, where I can practice what it means to act in courageous ways. I have found power in using my voice and speaking up for those who might have lost theirs. And I have found that in doing so, my voice can solve more problems than it creates by staying silent. But what about those times when you're too afraid to speak up? How do you act in a courageous way when you're so scared? Being courageous means doing it scared. It is engaging in acts that challenge you. It's in asking them out on a date, for the promotion that you deserve, or for the romance lacking in your relationship. It is at these moments where your opportunities to practice courage lie. When we engage in courage, it means we are speaking honestly and openly about who we are, about what we're feeling, and about our experiences, good and bad. By doing so, we are growing our capacity for compassion, supporting the energy that binds us together and helps us not feel so alone. But to do this, we must share. I'll go first. Mine is a story of the scariest day of my life. It was the day that I was committed to the psychiatric hospital. I share that with you today, my friends. Yet again, taking another courageous leap of sharing something that a lot of people would rather lock down into a vault deep into their heart and never speak about again. But what my journey has taught me is that us sharing openly and courageously about the things that we have been through, whether that is losing a job, being laid off, something that I'm currently experiencing, if it is the devastating loss of a parent or a child, it could be the loss of a relationship or heartbreak. All of these things make us human. And going through these individual experiences grows your capacity, grows your ability to connect with other people who might have gone through the same things that you have. And for me, when it comes to my mental health, it's a battle that I have fought since I was about a teenager. And thankfully, I was always able to act courageously even then and speaking out about the things that I was experiencing and feeling, enough so that I had parents, I had a mother who was very concerned about that and wanted me to be able to speak to somebody else because she was worried about my wellness. And I'm so thankful for her response as young as 16 for not shaming me for the way that I felt, because she didn't think that there was anything necessarily that was wrong with me. Her approach to recommending that I speak to a therapist was just that she knew that I wasn't comfortable telling her what I was going through, and she understood that it was important for me to talk to someone. And when I did that, things began to change for me. And therapy became a courageous act that I gift to myself even to this day. Because, my friends, one thing that I have learned in this journey, and I'm getting a little emotional sharing this with you, and especially in writing this book, is the only way that we can really get the help we need is to connect with other people. By sharing what we're going through, telling somebody when we're struggling, asking for help when we need it. Because staying silent keeps you in the dark. It keeps you depressed. It keeps you isolated. Because if nobody knows what's going on with you, how can they know how to help you? And what I've learned is you can't be so prideful and worried about what other people are going to think about you and how you're going to look in order to stop yourself from asking for the help that you need. And for many of us who are in the Black and brown community, that's something that we see a lot happen in our communities because there's a stigma around mental health. And it is because of that stigma around mental health why I speak so openly about mine and why I wrote what I wrote in the pages of this book. Because just like Mary Daly says, who I quote in the introduction of my book, you become courageous by couraging. It's about jumping into life's metaphorical deep end and just getting over it. Get over the fear that something's going to happen to you. Get over the fear that it's not going to turn out the way that you want it to. Get over the fear that people are going to talk about you. Because who cares about the folks who have something to say about you and what you're doing when they would never do what you're doing anyways? Right? We're never persecuted by people that are doing better than you or who are doing the things that you're doing. We are always persecuted by people who are standing by watching you and who would never do what it is that you're doing, who want to have the gall to come and speak about what it is that you're doing when they're just sitting on their hands. And so I take that same attitude, and you can probably hear the spiciness in my voice as I said that. I have taken that attitude and allowed that spiciness to propel me forward and share openly about my mental health and my wellness journey. And in doing so, I'm inviting other people into my journey to wholeness. And as a coach, the best way for me to serve my clients is to have an understanding of what they've been through and what they're experiencing and how they feel. And I can't do that if I'm calloused. I can't do that if I'm closed off. And I can't do that if I shut down and I'm not honest about my own personal journey to wellness. And so, my friends, today, I share with you something a little deeper about me in hopes that it can help you grow your compassion so that if you have any thoughts or negative feelings or you subscribe to the stigma that is around mental health challenges, especially in the Black and brown communities, my hope is that in sharing my story with you, that you too will change the way that you see this thing and recognize that God is doing a new thing. And that by bringing awareness and sharing that awareness with each other, we are contributing to the energy that connects each and every one of us, growing our compassion, increasing our connection, and growing our capacity as human beings, and contributing to the awakenings of masses that will eventually lead to the mass awakenings of so many in the entire collective, creating a brand new earth. One that we can be excited to live in, that will be better for our children and those who come behind us, and where we can be better people than we were yesterday. And so that, my friends, is my personal story of how awareness put me on in my journey to wholeness. Thank you, my friends, for rocking with your girl for yet another week. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to share with you about my book, Awareness Put Me On. I'm super proud of this collection, this anthology of Black and brown voices that has been comprised to elevate the voices of those who are underrepresented. And so that you can have a guide to look to for your leadership, to your spirituality, your personal development, and all the things, right? And all the ways that you can be put on. If you're interested in learning more about my story, feel free to head to Amazon and grab your copy of Awareness Put Me On. Make sure that you write me a review. Continue to follow me on your socials. And as always, until next week, my friends, be well and stay safe.
This has been a Forecast Media Podcast Network presentation. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. For more information and more great Forecast Media content, visit pushplaypods.com.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing facility, he knows keeping the line up and running is a top priority. That's why he chooses Grainger. Because when a drive belt gets damaged, Grainger makes it easy to find the exact specs for the replacement product he needs. And next day delivery helps ensure he'll have everything in place and running like clockwork. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This is the story of the one. As a custodial supervisor at a high school, he knows that during cold and flu season, germs spread fast. It's why he partners with Grainger to stay fully stocked on the products and supplies he needs, from tissues to disinfectants to floor scrubbers. All so that he can help students, staff, and teachers stay healthy and focused. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.